This week, I'm going to show you how to shoot a super wide angle shot with a kit lens. Now you need to know a little bit about Lightroom for this. If you don't, click on the eye in the corner. If you haven't got Lightroom, go get the trial version. There's a link in the description below. This technique is predominantly for still subjects. If there's enough light, you can shoot handheld. If there's not, get the camera on a tripod. I'm using the 24-70 on a full frame camera. If you use a crop sensor, this is similar to the 18-55. So these are the steps. Take a photo in the normal mode that you use. Make sure it's exposed correctly. Have a look at the scene. Make sure that the brightest parts aren't overexposed. Look at the image and make a note of the settings that the camera has selected. You can do this by pressing the info or display button. So you'll have your shutter speed, aperture, and your ISO. Switch the camera to manual mode. You'll have to be in manual mode because otherwise the camera will change the exposure when you're pointing it towards the darker points compared to the brightest points in the image. Input the exact settings that you had on the initial mode that you shot in. Make sure the brightest parts aren't overexposed. Make sure you set focus and then switch it to manual focus. Think about the picture you want, basically how wide and how big you want it. Start taking photographs to cover the final image, making sure they overlap enough to enable Lightroom to stitch them together well. It's better to take too many than not enough. You also don't have to be that precise, but make sure the camera is level. One tip is when you're shooting the image, work your way from left to right and then go on to the next level and go left to right again, and then go on to the bottom strip of images and go left to right. You can see I've done that here. The next step involves the use of Lightroom. Once you've imported your images and have them on your film strip along the bottom, select them all. Make sure you're in the Develop module. Don't make any edits yet. We'll do that after the merge. Right-click on any one of them and then click on Photo Merge, Panorama. Then wait. If you have a fast laptop or a computer, it shouldn't take too long. If you do have an older system, it's probably time to go and get a cup of tea. Once it's processed, you'll be given 3 options. Spherical, cylindrical, or perspective. Basically, this is the projection. Spherical is as if all the images were plastered on the inside of half a ball. Cylindrical are where the images are projected onto the inside of a large tube, and perspective tries to keep the lines straight. Perspective doesn't seem to work too well with this technique, so stick with either spherical or cylindrical. If the projection looks a bit weird, don't worry about this. We'll fix it in the crop overlay. Just make sure the subject is completely covered, then click on Merge. Next, click on Crop Overlay. You'll see in this mode how much the image has been deformed and stretched to make the image work. In this, I adjust the crop to something I like. Just make sure it hasn't stretched the image too much. Now all you do is edit the image as normal and export to the settings that you want. Here is the stitched image. And then here is the single image. So you can see how much more you can capture with this straightforward process. Now there are limitations to this, and it's not quite as good as buying a wide angle lens, but if you're out in the open and you've got a massive landscape in front of you that you just have to photograph, this is the next best thing. One thing you might find is if you're really close to a tall building, it may distort. Also, with a stitched image, the megapixel count will be huge. What you'll find is if you've got a slightly slower computer, it'll take longer to process. And that's about it. If you have any other ways of shooting wide-angle shots with tighter focal ranges, put a comment below or send me an email. As always, if you like what you see, give us a thumbs up. If you didn't, give us a thumbs down. If you want to see weekly tutorials, hints and tips, subscribe and turn on notifications. I'll see you in the next one.